Astute Financial Services Exchange is an electronic information exchange company, enhancing the movement and integration of data in financial services and short-term insurance industry. The company was launched in 2000 and provides intermediaries with a single point of entry to clients' investment and insurance portfolio data, amongst others. This conversation is the start of a series of interviews where we will get a clearer idea of what Astute is all about and how they are increasing their offering across the whole industry. I'm starting the series with Andre Tait. Andre is the Strategic Business Enablement Manager at Astute, and today my conversation with Andre is very specifically focused on the Astute Investment Switch. Andre, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rianet. Pleasure to be here, and thank you for affording us the opportunity.
Yes, I am looking forward to our conversation. So I think as a start, maybe you can start off with a brief history of the Astute Investment Switch, just to get everyone on the same page.
Sure thing. So, Rianet, the investment switch was built around the data limitations on our consolidated client portfolio, specifically LISP and MANCO level. The main reason for this being that the consolidated client portfolio allows a fit and proper intermediary who has appropriate consent from a client to request policy and portfolio information from a partner insurer. When we look at the LISPs and MANCO specifically, these investment platforms are adhering to the intermediary on record rule, resulting in limited data provision currently as we stand, which prompted us to start investigating data provision to the current intermediary on record, as well as addressing the industry limitations and data structuring and standardization across investment platforms. Our service therefore provides the intermediary on record with a daily data feed on both your assets under management as well as transactions for the entire client portfolio invested on our partnered platforms in a standardized data output from all partnered investment companies.
That is a mouthful. Company was launched in 2000. We know how fast things change in our industry and in the world. Last year has just been a fantastic example of that. So at Astute, what has changed since you launched the switch? And maybe my real question is, how do you make sure you remain relevant?
Yeah, Rianet, so that's a great question. I think firstly, we've recognized the dire need for standardized and daily data feeds across investment platforms, which is one of our main service offerings on the investment switch currently as we stand. Secondly, we continuously engage with our stakeholders, being the investment platforms, our FAs with which we are integrated, as well as the end users, in order to ensure that we address these relevant industry gaps. Now, typically one such example is where we've enabled a non-FA user to have access to our investment switch platform via our Astute online web portal, allowing them access to the following on both assets under management and transactions. By way of explanation, this will include full access to our assets under management and transactional dashboard for a daily portfolio overview. Secondly, updated assets under management and transactional breakdown per investment company at client level. Then thirdly, it will then also include a fund breakdown and allocation per investment company across all client portfolios. And then fourthly as well, individual client portfolio accessibility on fund composition, allocation, and daily valuations. And lastly then as well, daily standardized data per investment on both assets under management and transactions.
That sounds like an expensive expense for an advisor, for someone who has to find all this information for clients. We all know that costs are a real concern. So without naming anyone, what do you charge and how does it compare to industry standards?
Rianet, that's an absolutely pivotal question, and I'll be very happy to answer this to you as well. So cost has been our main consideration prior to taking the service to market. Due to our involvement with the FAs with which we are integrated, we are acutely aware of the licensing fees which are applicable to each individual user. And we have therefore priced our offering as attractively as possible to enable adoption. For the non-FNA user then, just to look at the other side of the spectrum, our service offering is welcomed due to the lack of data provision platforms which are priced within our respective range as we sit. So how does this respective model work? So our commercials work as follows. And remember, this is both for data provision to an FNA or for data provision or consumption rather directly via our Astute online web portal. Now, how we've priced the model, we've had a look at the respective average client base that an investment intermediary has. And we've then come about with a total of roughly about 300 clients per investment advisor. We know for argument's sake, the guys that are working in the bank broking space, they might have potentially a couple of higher numbers there, but we know for a fact that your typical advisor has got roughly about 300 clients. Okay. So the pricing works as follows. For any respective investment advisor who has anything between 1 and 300 clients, that advisor for the data provision on both assets under management and transactions on a daily basis in a standardized format will merely pay a flat fee of 250 Rand a month. If we compare this to our consolidated client portfolio, which the majority of the advisors are familiar with, I would also then like to point out that typically your consolidated client portfolio, there is a charge linked to each and every transaction which is done and facilitated. The investment switch works completely differently on the basis that we merely charge you that one flat fee and you will be able to transact as many times as the advisor likes. If we then look at an advisor who typically has more than 300 clients, we also price this to be as attractive as possible, whereby for each client that is in excess of the previous 300 threshold which we've mentioned, we will then merely charge the investment advisor 1 Rand for each and every one of those clients. So by way of a typical example, if you're sitting with 325 clients to your name, ultimately then you are looking at 25 clients in excess of the 300 threshold, which then means that the pricing will be that we charge you 1 Rand times 25, which is 25 Rand, plus the original 250 Rand flat fee, which will then result in your 275 Rand at the end of the day.
That is extremely, extremely affordable. And
thank you. We also believe it to be.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense for anyone who is concerned about cost. Talking about cost, which relates to numbers, I always enjoy sharing some numbers, interesting numbers. So maybe just quickly, your daily transactions, what is that number?
Rianet, happy to answer that question as well. So by way of an example, we currently facilitate in excess of 21 million transactions per month across each and every one of our services.
Yo, that is a big, big, big number. Talking again, POPI and data. How do you ensure information transfer is secure, privileged, and confidential? Because we all know that POPI and data is key and a big, big, big thing in our industry.
Absolutely, Rianet. I think it's definitely on everyone's lips at this point in time. To answer your question, this in terms of POPI and how we approach POPI and information security. So information security and data privacy is a constant top priority within the organization. Astute is an ISO 27001 certified company across all of the information security elements, and we have robust security controls in place. We drive a security and privacy by design culture within Astute specifically, and this is evident from our auditors' feedback reports as well.
After everything you told me, I do believe that there are still advisors and planners and intermediaries who are not making use of the Astute switch, investment switch. Why not?
Rianet, I think firstly to answer that question, the main reason I believe is probably market awareness. Astute is renowned predominantly for our consolidated client portfolio switch, which as we mentioned is our flagship product. However, we've been marketing our service, specifically being the investment switch on this case, via LinkedIn as well as via our website to promote adoption. Now, due to the fact that any intermediary, irrespective of whether they are an FNA user or not, can utilize our service to enhance their client data, our target audience is therefore any investment intermediary requiring access to daily standardized data through the respective platform of choice, which is either the FNA or directly via Astute Online. I'd also like to urge advisors to visit our website at www.astutefse.com for further details by clicking on Services and selecting Investment Switch. Now, once you've selected Investment Switch, you will have access to our visual walkthrough of the service, which will show you exactly what the respective dashboards look like, which we've referred to earlier as well as the data specifically. And then lastly as well, you will have the ability to then register on that service for Investment Switch.
We all would like to believe that we are running a smoothless and 100% perfect operation, but the reality is that there is always room for improvement. What would you say where is Astute's room for improvement?
Rianet, great question. And I think firstly, one has to be perfectly honest with yourself and realize certain limitations to ensure that ultimately we provide and continuously provide value to our end users at the end of the day. As a fintech company, enhancement of derived data value is paramount to us remaining relevant. And as such, we continuously engage with our users to identify further opportunities. When looking at our data provision landscape, specifically on Investment Switch, we originally identified the top 30 companies in terms of total assets under management, utilizing the logic that these respective platforms represent the market segment where the majority of the client funds are invested in. And that has also been the feedback from market. This being said, we continuously invite our users as well to suggest further investment companies and integrations based on their respective needs, allowing us to then engage with these respective platforms to continuously provide an enhanced value offering to our respective intermediaries. Ultimately, our vision is to ensure that we integrate to all investment companies to then ultimately again ensure a direct data feed to the intermediary on that daily basis, which is where the dire need and industry gap exists currently.
You mentioned that you also invite them to give you feedback, and do you actually get feedback? You know, we often invite readers to comment and give us feedback, and you don't always get the response. It's easy for people to complain or talk to their colleague about limitations and gaps. Do you get the feedback from your clients?
Yes, so happy to report as well, Rianet, that yes, we do. I think it ultimately boils down to the relationships that we have with our users. We've done a lot of work in terms of understanding what the limitations are from an industry perspective, as well as what our respective users, being the intermediaries, require. And as such, then we continuously focus our investment switch enhancements on what these respective advisors want. For example, even though we are live with our respective current content providers, being the investment companies, these respective advisors will then prompt us towards directing us to certain investment platforms which have not necessarily previously been on our radar. And as such, then we utilize these conversations to then start engaging with those platforms and ultimately then get these platforms on board to further enhance the value offering to the end user.
Great, that is good to hear. A final word to the FAnews audience.
Rianet, in these tough economic conditions, an advisor needs to focus on service excellence to drive sustainable growth in both profitability and client base. Through the intermediaries partnership with Astute, our data allows you to make these educated and informed decisions, allowing you then to focus on what it is that you do best, which is ultimately providing superior investment advice.
Yes, I agree with you, and thank you for your time, Andre. I've learned a little bit about Astute today, and I'm excited to learn more as we go on with some of the other switches and the other conversations that I'll be having with some of your colleagues. But thank you for your time and for explaining it to those who know and don't know where the gaps are. So yeah, all the best for you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Rianet.